What's going on YouTube? It's Watsim here again with another Forza tuning video. I know. Oh, it's so surprising that they keep coming. That's what she said. Anyway, so here today we have the Subaru Impreza 2005 edition. And I like this car. It's different. It's again, it's a different way of tuning a car, which I'm always looking for. And it's fun. I like it. It's kind of similar to the way I did the Volkswagen Golf, but it's more fun. More fun and a bit better actually. And so with all that being said, let's have a look at the parts. Let's have a look at the innards. Let's just have a look at the car, shall we? Okay, so now getting to the parts. Straight away we go to the engine as usual. And as before with the Golf, just as with the Golf I should say, we have the rally engine, the turbo 1.6. It's just such a great engine for four-wheel drives. It produces that amount of torque, a ridiculous amount of torque, 589 foot-pounds of torque, and yeah, it's all things to all men in that manner. And it's still a stock drivetrain. It's a four-wheel drive car, of course. Now, this time we're going to have a bit of fun with the bodywork here. So on the front, we have a street front bumper, they call it. It's the Subaru badged one, and as you can see, we get a lovely bump bar on the front there. It's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. That's all I can describe it as. It really provides a lovely cushion to when people are in your way. But seriously, it's mainly just for performance, to be honest. It's yeah, anything else just makes the PI rocket, and that's there. It just knocks the PI down. It's beautiful. On the rear, we've got standard, fully adjustable rear wing, but it looks a bit different on this. It looks quite cool. It's got the little slats in the middle, which make it look like it's been really methodically, aerodynamically considered and designed, which is cool, I suppose. Stock rear bumper. Street side skirts, as they're called on here, again for PI reasons. As you can see, everything else is not. And we've got the mudguards with it, which is pretty cool. You know, who doesn't like mudguards? You know, let's bring mudguards back. And on the front, we have, as you can see, a lovely set of fog lights. I suppose they are extreme fog lights. Every other, again, same reason. Look, perfect PI. It's a perfect combination of parts which come out at a perfect number. So yeah, the car looks great. And it drives pretty good as well. So tyres, let's have a look. We have a stock tyre compound on this thing, which is, you know, brave in a way, but it really works. To be honest with this thing, it's brilliant how it is. It's not got the most grip in the world as you wouldn't expect, but because it is, you know, it's a rally car. It's got a certain amount of mechanical grip. It's fine. You have to be a little bit careful with it through certain corners, but once you get the hang of it, you can win a lot of races with this thing. I often win many races with it. Maximum width at the front and also at the rear. So 275 both front and rear. And in terms of wheels, we have the lightest possible. And they have been left exactly as they should be. Not been increased at all. So stock clutch, as usual. Stock transmission. A street driveline for PI purposes, and a race diff. We have race brakes, race suspension, gonna rush through this, sorry, race front anti-roll bar, race rear anti-roll bar, full roll cage, and all the weight's been taken out. It's amazing. I wish there was an option here to just say do all every time, because it's such a tedious thing to go through. But anyway, now engine's pretty simple. Again, same as with the Volkswagen. It's just maximum. Take off all the restrictors, get the most power out of it. Done. Simple, easy. Now let's look at the less simple part. Let's have a look at the numbers. So tyre pressure, we've got set to 28.5. That's because they're stock. That's because they really don't gather temperature very well. They do gather temperature quite easily, but they don't hold on to it very well. You know, they're stock. They're meant to be just road tyres. You know, things you'd buy from your garage. So that's what they are. I said previously with, I think it was my Mitsubishi Evo tune, that it's good for wet weather, these sort of cars. This car isn't that great for wet weather for a couple of reasons. One, it rides a bit low, so aquaplaning is really a huge issue with it. I tried it around Nürburgring in the wet, thinking I'd go all right, and it was an experience, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. It was a lot of fun, but not quick. I think I finished 4th in the race or something. There's some quite some good guys in there actually. There's some decent races in there, but it wasn't very fun. It's literally you just touch a puddle, and usually with 4-wheel drive cars you kind of power through because they've got more of a ground clearance. This though, no, just no, steer clear. So I would say if you did want to use it as a wet weather car, raise the tyre pressure maybe to like 29.5, and then raise the height of the car as well. We'll get to that in a second, what it's at the moment. But 28.5 here, stock. Stock gearing, so I can't change that. It's absolutely how it is. But if you look at the gear ratio there on the graph, it looks nice, it looks even, it looks good. Nothing wrong with it. Wheel alignment. We have got the camber set to -2 at the front, -1.5 at the rear, the toe set to 0 at the front and 0.1 at the rear, and the caster set to 5. This is a partial setup that I've taken from R-Class race cars. I think it was specifically the Corvette R-Class race car. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's the Z06 race version. Maybe. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But it's the R-Class race version anyway. And I had a look at the setup for that because I took part in a couple of races in the R-Class Sim League last week. And given that those cars are high performance, they're race cars, I thought, okay, these are tuned this way. I don't really want to mess with this tune too much. I will reference this tune, work out exactly what the spring rates and things should be using my usual calculation, and work out exactly how the camera and everything works on it, and I'll try and transfer that over to A-Class cars. And it's worked quite well in the main. There are odd exceptions where it doesn't work so well. But what I found out was the front caster doesn't really get touched at all. It stays at 5 mostly on pretty much all of those cars. It doesn't work so much with every car in A-Class, leaving it at 5, but with this it works well. It leaves the balance of the car at the front. It gives you with enough manoeuvrability, so it just pivots around its centre of mass quite well. It's just really nice. The camber is exactly the same as it was on the reference car. That's pretty much the stock camber I start with on most of my tunes now. It works really well. It gives you a lot of turning. The rear is still quite responsive without being too responsive. And as for the toe, I think the toe is slightly different. I think the toe was 0.2 at the rear. But with this being 4-wheel drive, I didn't really need that. I got grip on all 4 wheels. I've got power on all 4 wheels. You don't have to worry too much about the rear squirming out too much. But on a rear-wheel drive car, mine is 0.2. Probably a better way to start out. Not always, but works well in the main. So that's where we are with this. Now, anti-roll bars. Again, referenced in the beginning from the R-Class cars, and then I was tuning during a stream last week, and someone came in the room and they were telling me what they do for their tunes and stuff like that. And he advised that I try a similar spring rate, and it's not exactly the same, similar to this. And it took me a while to get used to it. I didn't like it, but as you can see, what it should do is allow the front end to be more responsive and softer through the corners, so you can get the front end in, whilst the rear remains stiff and hopefully not too oversteery. Now, 19.91 around 20, that's not oversteery. That's just, that's kind of stock, that's box standard. If you put them both at 20, you would get a very evenly riding car, like front and rear, both at 20. But with the front being slightly, 50% less than that, it does give you that little bit extra leeway into the corners. Like I say, it gives you that extra bit of turning, that extra bit of direction, and I think it works really well. It's something that I'm starting out doing on most of my cars now. I don't always leave it there, but it's pretty good. I recommend this as a way of trying to set up your anti-roll bars in conjunction with your spring rates. As you can see there, spring rate very different to usually. Where I kind of lean, I think I do adhere straight to, as we know, the equation that I always say, where it's the weight of the car times 0. Whatever the front weight bias is, divide that by 2, and that will be my front weight bias. Well, the weight bias on this is 55%. And as you can see, there is a bigger differential between these two than 10%. So 45% for the rear, 55% to the front, that would be 10% between them. That's much bigger than 10%, as you can see. Now, the idea is, with your front end roll bars being softer, you make your springs stiffer, so you strike a balance, so that the car holds its shape through a corner, but is still able to dip into an apex, still able to get the shape it wants in the apex. And the complete opposite with the rear. So your rear is soft enough so that you don't lose traction when you try and power out of the corner, but yet it still holds its form and its shape through the corner because you've stiffened the anti-roll bars up at the rear, if you can see what I'm saying. So that's the theory behind it, I think. I didn't actually ask him this, he just told me what this is and I tried to interpret it the way it was. It does work quite well, not with every car, as all tunes don't work with every car, but this method does work quite well on, I'm going to say 90% of cars in the game. It's definitely a better handling way, better way of getting a handling setup out of your tune, I should say. It takes a bit of getting used to. I've had to adapt my driving style to it slightly, but I think people who play on third person view will enjoy this setup a lot more and get more successful results out of it than I do, considering I play in cockpit. But yeah, so we're set to 9351 at the front and 480.1 at the rear. Now I got those by doing my normal equation. So whatever the weight would be times 0.55, divide that by 2, and then initially I was adding 100 pounds or 100 whatever the unit is. It is pounds, isn't it? Yeah, 100 pounds in weight to the front. So it should have been around 835, I believe. I may have adjusted it slightly since then, but this is where it actually started. Say it was around 835, I added another 100. Now that was taken directly in reference from what I was talking about earlier, the R-Class setups. The R-Class setups, from what I could work out, were the base weight of the car, using the same equation I always use, plus 100 pounds on both front and rear. Now I've changed that slightly on here. I've done it for the front, but the rear I've done the opposite. I started out with the base setup, so let's just say it was around 580. I don't think it was. I think it was a bit higher than that. But let's just say, for argument's sake, it was around 580. So then I just took off 100, and that's where I'm starting out now. I don't really leave it there because I think the rear needs to be softened up a little bit more than that. I usually go now, say 150 less. So let's say it started at 630, and now I've put it down to 480. That sounds more likely what I might have done. So for the front, your base setup that I usually recommend is, which is the weight of the car, divide that by 0. Whatever the front weight bias, divide that by 2, and then add 100. That will give you your front. For your rear, weight of the car divided by the remaining weight percentage, divide that by 2, subtract 150-ish. Play with it a bit. Find out what works best. If you're still getting a bit of oversteer out of the corners, still getting a bit of vibration through the pad because the rear wheels are bouncing up too much and you're losing traction, soften it a bit more. So yeah, that's where I am with that. And the ride height, as I said, this is really, really low, as most of my tunes are. It's just one above the minimum. If you're going for a range setup, put it around, 4 or 5 up, so that you don't aquaplane as much. Rebound stiffness got set to 8.2 and 9, and bump stiffness at 6.8 and 4. Now again, in the last week, as I said, I've been learning things. The two things that I've learned from both my experiences in R-Class and also the experiences on my stream, again, have heavily influenced what's going on here. So I was advised to try starting out with my my rebound stiffness at 8 and 9. No matter what the weight bias. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you'll know that I kind of set my weight bias going, my weight bias. I set my rebound depending on what the weight bias of the car is. So if it's 55% in this case, I would usually set the front to around 0.5 higher than the rear, as you can see there. But with the setup as it is here, you need to mix everything else into that. You can't expect the same results by doing one thing differently somewhere else and then doing the same thing elsewhere as well. You're just going to get a very mix match kind of thing. So in this case, I started out like that with 8 and 9, but I thought it was too understeer. I didn't like it. So, you know, logic says you stiffen up the front, makes the front more responsive. That's what happened. Now with the bump stiffness, I take direct reference for the front from the R-Class experience that I learnt, because I saw the most of the stock bumps on the R-Class cars I was using was 6.2 on both front and rear, making them ultra responsive. So you turn in, you get instant responsiveness. But with those chassis being tuned the way they are, you can't do that with every car. If you do that with every car, you're going to get a lot of spinning out, a lot of oversteer, a lot of uncontrollable stuff. Particularly on a car like this, it's got stock tyres. So on the front, I've come out at 6.8. Now that's just to aid a lot of turning, especially under deceleration, especially under when you're just when you're coasting the car through corners. And the rear is set to 4 because I found it gave me the best balance on the rear. I don't really have a reason for that. I started it, as I said previously in the reference, I started it about 6, I think, not 6.2. But that was just too much. The rear was letting go. It was going all over the place. It's too responsive. Not good at all. So I found that 4 gave me the best balance. The rear is now very disciplined. It stays where I want it to, and the front is great. Aero. Now we got no aero on the front. It's just got that bump bar on the front, so that's not there. And rear aero, I've just left stock, so I've not touched it at all. That's just how it is. Braking balance we have set to 51% and 155% pressure. 155% because, as you may have seen in the last video, I've changed the way I'm doing my brakes now. But this is higher than 140% previously because the tyres are worse. The tyres are worse, therefore you need to put a bit more work on them. And yeah, that's the only reason basically. So it's the same balance, just higher pressure. And I like it. I think it works fine. You could probably go a bit higher if you really wanted to. You could probably go a bit lower if you wanted to. You can do what you like. But that's where mine is. Now I've got the diff set to 60 and 40 at the front, 66 and 42 at the rear, and a 50% balance. A lot of mistakes during this video, not sure why, I do apologise. But anyway, shows that I am human and not a robot. Don't know what I mean by that. Anyway, I can't really explain these, this is just what I liked. I tested it, liked it, just how it was. My stock rear wheel drive setup is pretty much the same as this. I might go like 64 and 42, but I don't know, I liked where that was. That felt fine. It worked perfectly well for me. So yeah, and 50% balance, not bias. Bias and balance, two very similar words in my mind apparently. 50% balance because yeah, you get equal power through all the wheels, as I explained before with the Volkswagen tune. It's just fine. It just gives you the perfect balance. For lack of a better word, that's what it does. So to sum up with this car, I would say that it's extremely good around short tracks, like some of the short Silverstone tracks. It kills. It absolutely destroys those tracks. It's great around anything like that, really. Anything that requires a lot of real quick acceleration, short little corners, anything like that. Nothing with long straights though, I would say. Nothing with like straights that you're going to require a lot of power. So Road America is a no-no for this. It does interestingly go okay around Daytona. Not Daytona, I mean Indianapolis. That's the one. Forget Daytona. It goes really well around Indianapolis. Not the full oval, obviously, but the tracks with the infield involved in it. It goes really well in there because those corners are actually quite slow, and you can actually use the acceleration to your benefit there. And even though it does get out of steam really quick on the back straight and the real sweeping long right-handed or left-handed, depending on which way you're going around it, it just has enough power. It's not a problem. It's just fine around that track. But I would say Road America, Silverstone Fall, Spa, avoid those with this car. It doesn't have the power at all for those tracks. But anything else that's short and quick, go for it. Probably not a high downforce track because it doesn't have downforce. But anything else, go for it. And as before, as we should remember with this engine, you must shift at 5,000 revs. If you don't shift at 5,000 revs, you're going to go out of the power band and you're going to lose all drive, all acceleration, all power, and you'll just get overtaken by everything. So if you shift at 5,000 revs, you'll get in 6th gear really quickly, but that's fine. That's where you want to be. So with all that being said, hope you enjoy it. I hope this video wasn't full of too many mistakes. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do subscribe, drop a like on the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.